Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stockham, your host, and I am delighted that you are here. You are in for such a remarkable conversation, and I think a huge treat. We want to say thank you to our sponsors, LamanoArt.com, and also to the Stegner family. And we are just so grateful for Leon Kolaski for taking time from your incredibly busy schedule and joining us here in studio. Leon, thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Glad to be
Yes,
here.
I'm so glad that you are here. Leon, you've had quite a journey from a major skeptic about energy healing into a place of absolutely changing people's lives in remarkable ways with energy healing. How was that transformation? How did you get to where you are today, friend?
Yeah, so I think early on, when I was younger, I definitely had a lot of intuitive abilities and just knowings and things like that. And as I went through life, I think I kind of got away from some of that stuff. Some of those, whatever you might call them, gifts or different tools that can really help me. And it was pretty cool. I was in literally about 10 years ago, I was in a mastermind and met a woman that ultimately became my teacher. That Her whole thing was, around energetics, for the physical, for relationships, finances. And, I was kind of drawn to the work, to be honest, because of being an entrepreneur. I wanted to learn how, like, oh, there's like a cool thing where I could use energy to like help make more money, right? So that was kind of my initial draw into this stuff. And for me, then it was I actually already started doing some of the training and got exposed to some of the tools that I use to help people with every day now. And it was about 5 years ago. Had a family tragedy, and my father had taken his own life, and so that had a big impact on me in really all areas of life. And it wasn't until about maybe 6 months, after that I literally had an epiphany that, oh, like, I could use this stuff to kind of help myself.
Yeah.
And from there, over the next several months, just taking care of myself, really kind of shifted, things in my life. I felt like I was in like a black cloud, and kind of came out from under that. And then it was just organically, I have been working as a marketer for the last 15 years. So I have, several different clients and people around me that would tell me, what's going on that they needed some support with. And one case in particular, I had a client. She was about ready to go in for very major back surgery.
Mm.
I was like, I kind of got the ping that I followed was like, have
Yes.
a conversation with her, right? So I had a conversation with her about, what I had learned and what I think we could do. And so I did some work with her, and I still remember very vividly the next day after one of the major sessions that it was her and her daughter in the car, and her daughter asked, what the F did you do, to my mom? She
Right.
had noticed, radical shift in her energy. And
Mm.
long story short, she didn't need to have that procedure, and, was able to, work her way out of that. And then it was just after that, I just kind of became fascinated, is the best word, uh, of what is possible,
Mm.
in this type of work. And so from there, it was just organically, I'd have, somebody that I knew in my close circles, mostly clients of mine or, friends that I would see that are struggling in one of the areas that I can help with. And I would do some work with them and see some really radical shifts. And it
Mm.
kind of became a little bit addictive, where I was like, oh, I want to do what else is possible.
Right.
We're taught so much that we have all these limitations, and
Mm.
that I don't believe that we need to participate in that. So from there, I just started to keep working on more and more people, and it was really about 2 years ago that I decided that I wanted to combine my marketing skills and really help a lot of people and just see what I
Mhm.
could do with this. And so I started doing that and just working on a tremendous number of people, and
Mhm.
things showed up, just really cool things, and that ultimately led me to teaching and really just having a standard book of business of people that I work with, and help with this stuff. And so that's kind of how we connected, was through mutual acquaintance that
Yes.
was aware of some of the things that I do. So
I'm so grateful that Dr. Robin introduced us. And when she said your name, I was just immediately struck because your first name is my dad's middle name. And
hmm,
so, she was like, "Do you need to think about this?" And I was like, "No, I don't need to think about this at all." And the conversations that we have been ones that I have walked away from, Leon, and have thought about deeply at different points in times. And as somebody who has been in the supporting other people world for a while and teaching Reiki and supporting through that, even at the Huntington Hospital, um, there is a different uh, type of healing that happens in a different way with the work that you do. And I'm so fascinated by that. You use that word fascinated, and the base of that word is the word fascinar, which means to just focus in on, right? Like you can't take your eyes away from it. What is this that I'm looking at? It's so, so interesting. And I'm just so excited about where you are today. I know that the path of where you got to where you are is one that has been with a lot of pain at different points. And I am so grateful for you not only choosing to keep moving forward, but also that you're willing to talk about that and open up this conversation for other people who have had major losses in their life and looking at their life and wondering, I had these gifts as a child, or things that I could do, or things I could touch or push into. And somehow, as I grew older, I stopped doing those things. And maybe there was a connection in between who I was and the gifts that I had, and potentially where I am today and how I could possibly use those moving forward. Friend, when you think about your gifts, why do you think that you began to, um, my words, not yours, push them aside and not develop them at that point?
yeah, I think that knowing what I know now, almost 97% of all of this is unseen. And so, why aren't we talking a little bit more about that than what we can actually see? And so I think a little bit of it is just, others around us, like, oh, just the perception. But I see that shifting radically in the last couple years. I mean, you could see even people doing spiritual things. I live in California, so probably a little more woo maybe than other areas of the country, but it's not unusual to see people that are doing other things, seeing a healer, alternative types of healing, sound baths, other types of things that people are becoming more, as a consciousness increases for the collective, um, then more people will become aware of their sensitivity, to energy. So that's a little bit of it. It's just, I think things are starting to shift where it's a little bit easier to, take a spiritual path than maybe it was, 10, 20 years ago. Uh, Also, I think the other thing, from what I understand with energy is that, and I see it all the time when I work with people, is that, we've got our physical body, and then obviously our energetic body, all of our, probably hundreds of, chakras or mini chakras and different energy centers. And, as you go through life and you have traumas, whatever it is, interactions with other people, some of that stuff is in the energetic body. And what happens is that stuff becomes more and more congested, um, because of lack of really energetic hygiene. then it actually, the function of that is that that information that's trying to come in, that might provide some insight to somebody, it might not be able to get there because of, so much of that, we'll call it creepy energy. And so, what I find is that when people start using some of the tools, then it just opens up to the information that was always there.
Yeah.
And that's very much the same information that, helps the body heal. Right?
Mhm.
If, many times, I have people come to me and they'll have some sort of physical pain or something that's going on. And
Mhm.
pretty quickly you could find that, that started 10, 20 years ago, and
Mhm.
it's some unresolved thing that's been sitting there. And, the pain or whatever that somebody is experiencing
Mhm.
is just the body saying, hey, this needs some attention. We got to work on this.
And when somebody's waited for a couple decades to finally begin to address it because the pain is so intense in the physical body, sometimes it's really easy for that person to go back and go, yeah, I know what it was. But so often there are so many other things that have happened that it's hard to see the event that was the one that became the catalyst. The other events then may have also piled on top of.
Yeah.
Because once we begin to hear things a certain way, for good or not,
Mhm.
continue to listen at that frequency.
Yeah. And, so when something occurs and there's a certain energy that is there, from a trauma, it's then uncommon for somebody to experience other, energies that, may be similar to that. And,
Yeah.
and really what it is just that resonance of that energy is just, you're getting a match,
Yeah.
out there in the world. And that's why when you get your energetics cleaned up and sorted out, that really you get to experience what your brightest, and shiniest soul is here to do, and
Mhm.
not have to deal with all that junk.
Yeah. Leon, I'd love for you to talk about that space of when we look at old paintings, hundreds of years old, that will show the saints, that kind of have the white around them. But before we do that, I want to get a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I am the founder and owner of Lamano Art. I began this business over 20 years ago. I specialize in paintings of all kinds. I make murals, portraits, and live paintings. My specialty is color and also telling a story. Some of the work that Lamano Art does are calligraphy pieces, wedding invitations, sign work, and sculptures like fairy doors. I'm open to working with anyone on any idea. Please feel free to contact me at your convenience, and I look so forward to talking to you. Thank you.
Oh, I so appreciate Lamano Art and the mural that they painted for us to be able to use in studio as well. Leon, we were talking about light that we would see, how they painted it, right? You have
Mhm.
some very specific words that you use. Would love for you to talk about that and share, please.
Yeah. And so, um, uh, if anybody, what she's referring to is like pictures of like Christ or even like Mary Magdalene. I remember as a child seeing it, my grandparents having statues, and you would see these like rays, coming out, from those souls. And really what it is every single pore that is on our physical body, there's actually an energetic ray, unseen ray, that is coming out from there. And what happens is if we're in environments where people may be saying harsh words to you, or you may be watching something on TV that is really negative, over time, what happens is those can begin to shrink and get tangled. And, over time, that can be something that can cause, poor health. And so it's kind of fascinating that people back then there were people on the planet that had the perception to be able to see, energy in that way, where that's the way that they had depicted it.
So when you are working with energy, then I believe that some people can hear things, they can see things, they can sense them, they can smell. It's all the different senses. All of us are different in how we take in the information that we're being given. But when you are working with someone, and so often as I understand, they are not in the room with you, right? They send you a
Very
picture.
rarely.
Right, exactly. They send you a picture at the beginning of the time you work. They send you a picture at the end, and they are able to see the difference. I know that I was able to see the difference between that with the session with you. And so, where do you start with those light, bright tentacles of light that are coming out, that are matted, that are intertwined, that have shrunk? Do you start with untangling them? Are you starting with lengthening them?
Yeah, as part of one of the techniques that are taught, in person with me, we actually teach how to work with those to restore them to their original form, to their brightest form, so to speak.
Mm.
Yeah. The other thing that can be really effective for people, just kind of cleaning up the overall energy field, is
Mhm.
most people know if you go jump into the ocean, how much different you feel after being in there, and really that's because salt is a really fantastic tool. It kind of gobbles up some of the lower energies, and as part of my practice, it's pretty rare that I go a day without doing a salt. It does a good job of cleaning up some of those lower energies.
I know that you talk about not using iodized salt, but you also talk about not necessarily having people use Epsom salts. Can you talk a little bit about why you choose what you choose?
Sure. I actually flip it. So with the Epsom salt, that does a good job of working on and helping out the muscles.
Mhm.
Regular salt is the one that actually works on the energetic body.
Mm.
And so the work that I'm doing, my concern is we get the energetic body sorted first, because everything starts in the energy.
Yes.
And then, that's when you can experience the shifts in the physical. So the idea with like an Epsom salt is it has different minerals and stuff that help with the muscle,
Mhm.
which are not as effective for cleaning up the energy.
Mm. Do you ever encourage people to take salt and put it on their neck if they are feeling like they're having a hard time finding their words or something like that? Do you use salt prescriptive that way, in addition to get into the tub, be there for 15 to 20 minutes with a lot of salt in the water?
Yeah, not specifically. That's not a technique that I use. Just the salt bath alone for
Mm.
15 to 20 minutes. A
Yeah.
warm bath with ideally like 3 pounds of salt is that'll do the trick. To help with cleaning up.
Cleaning the energies makes such a difference. Absolutely. In the space of the work that you're also doing in teaching, you also have continued marketing, and you have been selective in who you choose to work with. For the listeners who are thinking about their book of business and trying to decide how to move forward with the ones that they have, if they are wanting to shift a little bit, can you speak in general terms of how you chose the ones that would continue on with you? There's natural attrition that also happens with business often.
Sure, of
Um,
course.
sure, but would love to have you share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so at the top of the list, the number one thing is it has to be a product or service that helps other people. because I could, with my skill set, I could really market anything.
Right.
And, with that, it's like, why not have it be something that I always think of the impact in the world that I want to have?
Mhm.
And why not use that skill set to work through other people so that they can help more people? So I've worked with a lot of healthy organic products that I believe in. I also work with a lot of people in the I would say alternative medical space as well. And so it has to be a person and a service or product that myself and my team align with, because I realize that I have a limited number of time and people that I could really work
Yes.
with in that business. So I'm fortunate that I get to choose and be choosy
Mhm.
in that process.
It strikes me that you choose from the heart, that space of alignment.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that you are, it's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's a, this is, this is a great way to move forward. This is a great product or person, a service to be able to use your incredible talents to be able to accentuate what's taking place there for the greater good, for raising the consciousness, for
Yeah.
that vibrational piece around the world. Does it matter to you where the product is? Um, Let me say this differently. Does it matter if it's somebody who is in the Western world, or does it matter where they are in the world? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
No, not really. I've worked with marketing in any country, so yeah, definitely not a problem there. The other thing that I probably pay even more attention to when choosing if we want to work with a client is kind of where their energy's at,
Mm,
because that's even more important. That really tells me a lot about that person
yeah.
and what they're going to be like moving forward. And so, like even right now, I've got somebody that we're kind of, as a team, we're basically, I would say running tests, but we're, doing, a deep dive into all the things that they create and who they serve and, what is it like, to be their customer? Like what's their products and services, are what they teaching, something that, I align with. And then that just makes it, it's very challenging starting new business relationships. And so
Mm,
for me, I much rather do the work, because having a 3 or 6 month relationship, it really doesn't make very much sense. I much rather have, a relationship that's, 4 or 5 years minimum. And so that's kind of what I shoot for from the very
mm,
beginning. It's something that's only short term. It's just probably not a good use of my energy.
yeah. And the short term is going to take as much time as developing a long term. And there just becomes a whole different energy connection that happens in those spaces for that as well. And the long term is let's grow together, let's enjoy the journey together. And that becomes much more that marathon of, you know, enjoying the view as you're doing that space rather than it just being short.
Got to be fun to work with too, right? Same with team members. And
Yes.
gotta be fun, right? Because you're not
Yeah.
having fun, and having fun is so important, right? Like people think that love, is the highest vibration, but I would argue it's actually joy, right? If
Mhm.
you're, feeling, just even saying the word, love versus joy, dude, joy, joy, joy. I mean, you can't help but feel better. So,
Yeah.
by having that energy, in your life can really make a big difference in the way that people show up into the business and the
Mhm.
customers that you attract as well.
Yeah. I think of joy also as being one that expands the heart in a different way. I think it gives space for playing. It gives space for um, being curious. It
Mhm.
gives space for the opportunity of growth in a different way. I think. So speaking of joy, and coming to the word play, Have you noticed a difference that after people work with you, their level of curiosity, their level of wanting to play, increasing that in their life?
Absolutely. I find that people will spend more time outdoors. They'll do the little things that they're like inner child, or that they maybe suppressed because they, were told that they couldn't do those things. And so once they tap back into that,
Mm-hmm.
make the soul happy, then things unfold much easier and
Mm-hmm.
effortless. That's the way things are supposed to be. We're supposed to be abundant. We're supposed to be enjoy our limited time that we have here.
Yeah. I love how you use words to describe so effortlessly. It's beautiful. Um, when you are, let's go ahead and shift and talk a little bit about my experience working with you. You were so
Okay.
gracious to say, before we have a conversation where we're recording this, Sarah, let's try this. Let's have you try it actually. And so I did. And that whole idea of submersing myself in this beautiful, warm salt water. We no longer live close to the ocean, and there was something about that specific salt that was so clearing, just like if I were in Dana Point. I
Mm.
had my feet in the water playing there at Salt Creek. And so I really appreciated understanding and knowing that there was an access through going shopping that would give me a very similar experience of that feeling of that, and then also the sleep that came afterwards with that. Um, do you find that most people will actually do the salt bath ahead of time?
Yes. Like if I work with somebody one on one, it's not an optional thing, right? Like I want to get the best result in the shortest period of time. So I find that if somebody's not doing the work on their end, we're not going to get to the whatever that shift is that they're looking for as
Yeah.
fast as available. So like to me, it's like why leave anything to chance, right? Like
Mm.
do the meditations, do some of the other tools that are really simple and pleasurable, to uh, partake in as well.
Yeah. For about a week, consistently at night as I was falling asleep, I did one of the meditations. And I just was amazed at how, when I woke up in the morning, how much more energy I had and how much lighter I felt.
Mm.
And so I just so appreciate you sharing that.
Very cool. And what did you notice from the session? Because I know part of the reason why I like for people to have that experience if I'm on a podcast or show like
Mhm.
this is that it's much, everybody has their own words and unique experience. And so would love to see what little shifts that you had noticed after.
Mm. They were actually significant. Um, you,
Those
I,
are better.
so you didn't ask my backstory. You didn't ask a lot of questions. And this may be the first time that I have talked about this in a venue where, um, the first time I've talked about this, not just with a person one on one. So people around the world are going to hear. So for people who need to take a moment and skip through this part, you certainly have permission to do that. Teacher for 35 years, loved what I did, loved it. It was my identity. And my world fully wrapped around what I was doing. Even in the summertime, I would take over the kitchen table and sometimes even the dining room table at the same time uh, to work on what I was going to be creating for the next year. And at some point, we had closed down an elementary school, had given out a huge golden handshake, and they were laying people off. And because we were living in a time at that point that had declining enrollment. And so I had multiple credentials, and I was asked to come into the office at the district office, and would I please no longer be in the classroom, which was a safe place for me, a place that I really loved, had a waiting list, even at public school, for the next year for the students that I would have. And it was a really hard decision for me to make, but I knew not only that I was saving a person's job, I knew the person whose job I was saving. She was on our site. And so it just kind of became this is where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do. So I moved into the music program. And in doing so, Leon, I began servicing 5 different elementary schools over 2 different days. And opposite of what I was doing with other music teachers was a singular PE teacher who had aides. And so all of 4th grade would come out, or all of 5th grade. And so every single day, per the contract, the classroom teachers in 4th and 5th grade had the opportunity to have a prep period, and the students were getting things that were important. Some of the really amazing things about working in that school district was that we were close to the Rose Bowl parade, or close to the Rose Bowl, close to Pasadena. And so if there were other marching bands around the world who for some reason couldn't get there, given enough time, our marching band became the one that went to the Rose Bowl parade to march more than any other marching band. Mm-hmm. So the music program that we were developing starting in 4th grade really had incredible roots, and really impacted so much more than just community and the homecoming parade and those kinds of things, right? It was a larger thing. So in that space, I absolutely was surprised, like so many people, that we were going into a shutdown in March of 2020. I actually happened to be out of state, helping to take care of my mom, who had just had hip replacement surgery, and was getting texts from my aide and other people saying what was going on. And so we figured out how to maneuver through that. It was clumsy. It was what it was. And then we got to a point where we were able to come back in person. Now, for all of us who were teaching, I won't speak for everybody. For the group that I was working with, for all of us that were teaching, there were definitely points of how can we make this what we're doing better, and how is this going to be impacting next year, and then middle school, and then the marching band, and all those kinds of things as well. So we had different kinds of pressure points and concerns about where we were and what we were moving towards. I wasn't really thinking very clearly about what was taking place for the kids when they were home. My focus was on creating playlists and things for them to be able to do, and optional kinds of things as well. And as a non-techie, as somebody who wasn't a early adopter, I always wait for other people to kind of figure out, is this going to work or not, before I jump in. There were definitely things I had on my punch list that I wanted to do, and I was looking at that summer as the summer that I was going to really spend working on technology. So here it becomes compressed, right? Mm-hmm. We're doing it faster, we're learning faster, we're doing those pieces. When we come back, some of the kids have been at home and had fabulous experiences. They loved it. They could wear their bunny slippers. They'd bring their dog to class with them. Loved that. It was just so fun to see a different take on all of it. Sure. I wasn't thinking about what I knew from being a classroom teacher, that some of our kids were living with adults that struggled with different kinds of mental illness, and or students that were figuring out, beginning to show that they also potentially had some levels of mental illness as well. We come back in, and we all feel like it's a fresh new year. We're all back. We have new kids. We're going to get this worked out. We're going to make up for whatever that was that we couldn't do. We're going to get this figured out for sure. And in that space of starting another school year, there was a student who attacked me. And I went through the disability stuff. I was at school as often as I could be, but did tons and tons of physical therapy, did PTSD work, did all kinds of different things. But the hit came from this side of my body. And it was a child who had been trained, and then had also, my belief, I don't know this, but my belief was, had not just been trained, but had also needed to use it for their own safety at points. Mm. And so when the hit came, it was like an adult. It was full force. Yeah. And so that was that. You didn't ask for any of that. But yet, as you were doing all the things that you were doing, there was like a sharp piece of metal that came out of that shoulder. And I felt myself lifting up, like, do I need to go with this? Like, if my whole body, am I going to be standing up soon? It was that I was that aware of it. And then all of a sudden it just moved out of my body and I knew exactly what it was. And was just like, this is remarkable. And I had a couple other areas of my body that I also felt very strong pieces. I had surgery when, like, 2003, that they had removed some things that they thought could potentially become cancerous in my abdominal area. And there was just such a warmth and heat that warmed up in that area. I could draw for you what it looked like, what was pressing in to the point that it took my breath away. And yeah, I knew that it was for my good, that it wasn't there to hurt me, that it was healing me, it was moving me forward. And then there were a few other things that happened as well. I was just so absolutely amazed by these things because I have been doing Reiki, right? I am open, right? I am somebody I have not had my head in the sand on this. I have been working towards complete healing. And I just found that working with you was something that I'm fascinated by because I feel so different. I'm sleeping differently. And I had thought that I was sleeping quite well before that.
And you look different too.
Thank you. I do. Talk a little bit about what happens when we are stressed and then when we have a healing session with you, Leon.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. That's my first time of hearing it. I did know that you had a cool result, but I didn't know it was all of that. So cool for you to being receptive to having that profound of a shift.
Yes.
Just from one session. So that's very cool. So your question again?
I'm sorry. I'm so in the moment that I lost my question. How about on your side? Is this something that you see frequently? These types of shifts, and then also when you are doing this, are you getting messages in as to what it is? I know that for myself, when I've done Reiki, sometimes I knew what it was without the person ever telling me. And then became kind of do I tell them what I'm sensing? And that always becomes a different kind of conversation. But, were you aware of what I was experiencing?
So I don't, I try not to get too deep into the energy. Sometimes I do get more information than I ask for.
I understand that.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But to me, you had mentioned, if I remember correctly, some issues around digestion, and I
Yes.
didn't know about the physical stuff. But sometimes, this can, be a part of that. So once you get some of that stuff cleaned up, it's pretty magical. And so, yeah, that's another reason too, why I actually almost prefer working on somebody at a distance, because it allows for the person to just drift off and have whatever experience that they're, want to have, during a healing. Because and just because you felt things doesn't make it that something happened that isn't happening for somebody that can't feel, right? Like everybody has a different attunement. You've energy and done some other work, but there's just different there's different levels to teachings, as there is with any modality or any practice that's out there. There's always just different levels that can be achieved. And I'm just very fortunate that I get to be a vessel for some pretty high spiritual teachings and helpers and such that are able to do that. So to answer your question, have I seen stuff like this before? It's almost all very, very often. It's we got to the point, because I have somebody that I work with full time as a business manager that assists me with just a lot of the things that I do. And
Mm.
there was a period of time that we didn't even keep track of these things that people report to us. They're just like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I was like, I think we probably need to tell some of these stories because they're pretty remarkable. Well, like,
Yes.
so we have a list, we put everybody in like a spreadsheet, and we try and do
Good.
video calls and such to just show people like there are options, there are things
Mhm.
that can be learned, or there are practitioners, like
Yeah.
myself of, this energy mastery that can, be learned. You don't need any special gifts in order to be able to work with energy and, help yourself and, help others. And, for me, I just love, it's probably my favorite thing is when I hear of a story that I didn't know all of what happened, right? I knew that something profound was there for you. I didn't know all the details. I didn't need to dig into it, but it's so cool, like hearing from you, uh,
Yes.
what was available to you. And, sometimes I see things that people have been struggling with for 10, 20 years that,
Mhm.
no longer are there, or they just start shifting in the right direction. I also,
Right.
not all results are typical, right?
Right.
Everybody has their own healing journey, and
Yes.
want to honor that. That everybody is, got a different puzzle that needs to be solved for.
Yes. The question I had asked was about the face. Talk about a little bit about what you see happen. I would think on every single consistent basis, probably 100% of the time, that you see in the before pictures and then the after pictures.
Yeah, it's just a little bit brighter,
Mm.
right? It's like, 'cause not only do I see the picture, but I also get to see a little bit more than a little bit more into the energy. And just when that poopy stuff is taken and out of the picture, they just show up a little brighter,
Yes.
right? It shows up in the eyes. And
Mhm.
sometimes you'll see stress no longer in the face. It's pretty
Mhm.
remarkable. And everybody's, a bit different, but
Sure.
uh, in the reason I think, because I had, the reason that is because before I work on somebody, I always have them take a picture before and take one afterwards. And
Right.
it's not necessarily for me. It's more for, because what happens with people is sometimes they have these shifts that keep happening. A lot of times I work with people for, say 5 or even 10 weeks,
Mhm.
resolving, whatever it is they need. And when they get to, further down the line, they don't even remember, they have no recollection of
Right.
who they were before, or what they were like, or,
Yes.
how they reacted to me,
Mhm.
early on, and how receptive or unreceptive they were. Like,
Mhm.
they don't only know like now, which is good because, I
Yes.
don't want them to go back. But
Right. Right.
that's one of the reasons why I like having the picture, because it's just kind of cool to like have a little documentation of that and see if they can see the shifts for themselves.
Yes. I think also that when people are stressed, that their faces become, they pull.
Mm,
And I think that when people relax, that they become whiter. There's a different level of what's taking place. Perhaps it's in the jawline, muscular. I don't know, but there's a different look that happens in that process of letting go of stuff. And I really appreciate when people will say, I know who I am with my whatever trauma and drama, those kinds of things, right? But I don't know who I am going to be if I don't have those. If those are no longer my story, who am I? And
that's tough for a lot of people, because I see it often where some people, they say they want the miracle, they want, the miraculous result, and sometimes when they get it, that was their whole identity. They don't necessarily, because the mind could bring it right back. The mind's incredibly powerful, and they could slip right back, or slide back, and that's okay too. But that definitely plays a part of it, is that,
Mm.
who do you want to be? You have to have that like forward looking view of yourself.
Mm.
Otherwise it's very easy to, fall back for sure.
When people are creating their forward looking view of themselves, would you suggest that they have somebody who's either dead or alive kind of as their that picture of what they are moving towards? Or would you have a different way for people to begin to conjure, to bring up that future version of what they are looking for?
Yeah, I don't really use any specific technique, uh,
Mm.
other than I just make them aware of not to look for the old and to look forward, right? Because what people do is, like for yourself, you had some physical stuff, right? There was the
Right.
shoulder of your face, there was
Yeah.
something with the stomach and on the backside too. And so when those things, were taken care of, it's very easy for the person to be looking for the pain, looking for that,
Mm.
that, is no longer there. And that in part can
Yeah.
bring that back, right? Because what we focus on grows. And so
Mhm.
we're focused on that because of, the absence of part of that thing. And
Yeah.
where it can keep people stuck longer than they probably need to be.
Oh, I agree with you. You had asked me to just be aware of subtle shifts, and I'm just realizing now that my lower back, I hadn't been able to. I'd gone to chiropractors after this event, had done different things, right, and with the physical therapy as well, they were trying to figure out and help in different ways. Um, the my lower back wouldn't crack like it used to. I could move and stuff, but it wouldn't. And there I have been able to, since our that healing session, another one cracked lower down, and I was like, oh, that's so remarkable.
Isn't that
So
amazing?
it is. The body wants to heal. The body that
Body, you just gotta get rid of the stuff that's in the way, and it's
yeah.
pretty profound. I've had it many a times. I've had people when I'm actually working on them, like they'll actually hear the movement of the things going back to
Mm.
wherever they belong.
Where they're supposed to be, wherever they're
Because
best.
even because even just now, I just jotted the things that I can remember working on, with you. And
Uh-huh.
one of the things I just said was the back, and we didn't talk about that earlier. So I remember there was something there. So that's cool.
And I think that for some people, they see what's happening on the front side of their body as being potentially forward looking. Do you see it that way? I know there are lots of different philosophies here.
Yeah, I mean, in most cases, it can be,
Mm.
but not always. You know, Sometimes too, it could just be the actual, the organ itself, right? It may not even be, past stuff, but
Good point.
those things will affect the organ or the, particular energy center, back or front. So typically, the stuff is, your past stuff is on your back, energy centers or chakras, and
Mm.
the other stuff is on the front side. So
So, my yoga instructor talks about how we receive energy for the heart from the backside, that we open up our heart through our back of our wings. Could be that it's about more the muscular kind of thing. But how would you describe when people are going to open up their heart, how they do that to receive?
probably the biggest thing they can do, gratitude or service, will open that up for somebody. I think
Mm.
that's probably the other thing that really jams up the heart that I see the most in my practice is really lack of forgiveness.
Mm.
That's probably the biggest impact on the heart out of anything. And so much of what we create, can come from the heart.
Mhm.
That stuff is not, lack of forgiveness is just sort of like stuck, right? And I like to tell people you don't want to think of forgiveness as that you condone that other person and whatever happened or, whatever you experienced. It's
Right.
really for yourself to kind of let go of that, to kind of move forward.
Yes. It's giving ourselves permission to no longer carry the weight of whatever it was. That we are gifting that to ourselves to be able to move forward in a different way. I completely agree with what you're saying there, that we're not saying that it was okay. We're not condoning it.
No, it's
Yeah,
just for you.
it is. Forgiveness it truly changes who we are and how we carry energy going forward.
Yeah, I think it's one of probably the most powerful things that somebody can do for themselves if they've had any type of traumas or negative experiences,
Mm-hmm.
even if you can't remember some of the things, right? Because it's not uncommon if you've had experienced things, any childhood traumas, and people will regress some of those memories and won't even remember,
Right.
what's there. And so I think just kind of blanket forgiveness can help
Mm-hmm.
with those things as well.
Yeah, I forgive you, I release you. I think that those are such powerful words.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's another one about unripeness, right? Just allowing those things that are not ripe, just allowing those to move on. The timing isn't right, the whatever isn't right, but just allowing that space of movement, of choosing that, and to
Yeah,
release it.
I love just being more in the divine flow, right? Just go ahead and go with the flow. Like that's how I do everything. I don't like to plan anything.
Yeah.
Like, I just prefer to live that way with eating, whether I vacation, I travel. I don't like to plan all that much
Yeah.
because I just love to see what shows up. I
Yes.
recently just did a trip to Las Vegas, and was at a large event, and um, it was just kind of magical by just like, all right, I don't want to be in the room now. I want to be in the hall. And then I'm in the hall, and then I meet the person I need to meet and have that conversation. And then that conversation leads to that dinner, and that dinner. So, I enjoy, um, living like that versus
Mhm.
thinking, because everybody else is, in the room or doing this, that I need to do that. That's not me. That's not how I operate.
Have you always felt comfortable in that space?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
and I think it's not putting too much weight on what others think of, my actions or what I'm doing. I think that's also allowed me to do what I do with this work.
Mhm.
Because not everybody, would agree or think that. Yeah, there's all sorts of different thoughts around it.
Right.
That's good.
It is. It is. And it's also gifting people in that space their own opportunity to ask questions or not.
Mm,
And yeah,
mm.
um, it's so beautiful. Well, Leon, are there things that you would like to reiterate as we are coming closer to the end of our conversation?
Yeah. Um, I think cycling back on forgiveness
Yeah.
is, super powerful. A really good practice is, pulling out a sheet of paper. I think most of life's problems can be solved with a pen and a single piece of paper.
Mm,
Pulling out a single piece of paper and maybe jotting down all the things that you need to forgive, all the, things that had happened, and just whatever practice that you need, to come to that point, I think can really cause a radical shift.
mm,
And then realizing that energy is everything. I won't even start to create until I know that my energy is taken care of first, and
mm.
then I go out into the world.
Yes.
All right, even working with you, before I worked on you, I worked on myself so that I could be, have pristine energy, so that it can allow for, that's the energy that the miracles exist with. And
Yes.
so happy for you, and all of the cool things that happen, for you and to you as part of that experience. So
Mm, thank you. Well, I have loved the generosity of being with you again in this space and this time. And I know that our listeners are seeing your energyhealing.com, I encourage people to go there to learn more about you, to choose to work with you. Leon, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate having this chat. Thank you.
And to our audience, we say thank you so much for being here. I hope that you have gotten as much out of this as I have, and that Leon is somebody who is truly helping us to move forward with our energy, helping the vibration of the earth to shift upward. And what a beautiful thing that is. And until next time, take good care of you.
Hey Pamela, would you like to share anything about today's Art of Forgiving class?
Sure. So, I have now taken the Art of Forgiving class a few times, trial runs, actual runs, just so many times, and I love it every time. But so far, I've only ever drawn someone that I felt like I needed to forgive, and then today, for some reason, I really got stuck on the words like an event or someone. So I decided to go with an event. I actually broke my toe this weekend. It's been a hard weekend, even though it sounds so minor. It's really had a big influence on me. So I decided to draw, just from memory, the event of me breaking my toe and kind of how it happened. So here's my drawing. You can kind of see it's not fully complete yet. I still want to add some more color. But I think it was really important for me to draw this because I tend to have a harder time of forgiving myself for something that I did wrong that then hinders my life than if someone else would have wronged me. If someone had stepped on my toe and it broke, I would have gotten over that faster than the past few days I've just been drawing and what could I have done differently. How could I not be in the situation that I am today, and why me? And I feel like it really helped take those questions out of my mind and just paint it as a really beautiful scene and help me recognize that it was something